Found Why We Are Christians. I'm Kent Philpott. We're going to be talking with Bob Burns again. The last program, he talked about how it was that he became a Christian. Now we're going to start talking about what happened next. All right, Bob, welcome again.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Good to be here.
And we ended the program, and you were talking about your brother Mike, your oldest brother, and how he told you to shut up. I don't want to hear another word.
Right,
He's going to put his foot between your ears, or something like that. Now you told me in an interval a story about Mike. What happened?
So right before, like a week or two before I became a Christian, he and I both did heroin together. He was starting up on it, and he introduced me to it. And I'm so glad that right at that interval I met Hugo, and Hugo led me to Christ. But Mike went down that path, and I used to come to his house every weekend and witness, but eventually it came to the point where I couldn't anymore. And we sort of broke off communication for a long period of time. All I could do was pray for him. And sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and felt as if God was telling me, pray for your brother, he needs it right now. And I was reading a book by David Wilkerson called The Cross and the Switchblade. It's the story of Nicky Cruz. And in that book, I remembered very specifically about how Teen Challenge in New York City was dealing with a lot of heroin addicts. And sometimes these heroin addicts, when they became Christians, would have a miracle in their life of no withdrawals from it. And not always, but sometimes they would have a miracle of no withdrawal symptoms. So one day I'm up in my room, and my mom comes up there. I'm about, I guess, 18 at this time. My mom knocks on the door, and she opens the door, and she says, your brother Mike is here, and he wants to talk to you. And he does not look good. And so I go downstairs, and there's my brother Mike. His head is in his hands. He looks up. He looks like a ghoul. He is sunken eyes and pale skin and scabs everywhere where he's been using needles to shoot up. And he said, Linda left me, and I'll do anything if God will give me my family back.
His wife left him?
His wife and took the 3 kids and left them.
Wow. Okay.
I'll do anything if God will give me my family back, he said. I says, well, let's pray. You receive Christ now. And we prayed, and he gave his life to Christ. We took his heroin fixing kit into our my mother's backyard, dug a hole, put it in there and crunched it up and buried it. And he stayed at the house for some time. After the first day comes and goes, he's deep reading the Bible and everything, and he says, I should be experiencing some little sniffling or something like that. Oh, I forgot to tell you one other part of this. After I read that book, and he wanted to become Christian, and we thought he's going to go through the withdrawals. I went into my closet, got on my knees, and prayed, God, please give my brother this miracle that I read about in David Wilkerson's book. So a day passes, and he has no withdrawals. And he says, that's funny, I should be feeling something by now. I've tried this before. Second day comes and goes, and he says, this is really weird because I'm not feeling any withdrawal symptoms. The third day, he's bouncing off the walls happy because I'm not having any withdrawals at all. God has given me this, God has helped me and answered my prayers, he says. And then I told him that I had prayed for him for that thing. And he became a Christian, and it was a bumpy road, and I won't say that.
I remember him at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a smooth path all the way. There was a bumpy road, and there were some starts and stops, but ultimately he never reneged on his commitment to Christ, and he stayed a believer. And when he passed in 2001, he said this thing to me, which every believer wants to hear. He turns to me and he says, I'm so glad you told me about Jesus Christ. This is just like months before he died.
And Linda and the kids came back.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry I left that out. He got back with his wife and kids and had another kid. So they ended up with 4 children. And he stayed with them for a good, that was 75, 85, 85, 95, almost about 25 years until he passed.
Wow.
And they lived down in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I can still picture him in my mind's eye.
Yeah.
I can still see him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're going to the Bible studies at the Christian church in Los Ranchitos, northern part of San Rafael, and the kids gathering. So what happened after you graduated, Bob? What did you do?
So actually, becoming a Christian was not like the end of all my problems.
Shocking.
The truth of the matter is that a lot of my problems increased. There was a period of 3 years up until about 1975 when it was so hard, it seemed, to just be a Christian. Because I have the pull of every teenage kid in one direction while I'm supposedly going in this other direction. And it was a very hard time, and it was some spiritual battles, and things did eventually turn around. People try to give you sort of like easy solutions for stuff. I remember one time somebody says, "Oh, when you're feeling bad, say this particular phrase, and that's supposed to make you feel better." It worked once or twice and never again. It's just sort of like a magical phrase or something, but in Christian lingo.
Sure.
And but it was tough. There was a lot of hard times, but eventually things started to even out. And I went to college. Didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did know that.
Where'd you go to school?
Well, for a time I went to college in Marin. Then ultimately I moved to San Francisco to be part of a mission in the city and church planting project, and finished up school in San Francisco.
Okay, San Francisco State?
San Francisco State, and then I got a divinity degree at Golden Gate.
Golden Gate.
Baptist.
So you went and did a Master of Divinity at Golden Gate.
Yeah, that happened. I got an associate degree in the 80s and then finished the master's just like 5 years ago.
I remember your major in college was history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You've always been the history guy to me, Bob.
Well, context is big, very important to me. I think that everything has to be in its proper context to be properly understood. And
Yeah.
history is about context.
So I remember you, Bob. You were one of our leaders. You were one of our leaders. And there was a point at which we ordained you, didn't we?
Yeah, that happened in 1979.
79.
79, yeah, San Francisco.
And you were pastor of the church in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I remember we started a bookstore.
Yeah.
On 19th and Terraville, between
Terraville.
18th and 19th on
Between
Terraville.
15th and 16th.
Okay,
on
all right,
Street.
right, that's
Yeah.
right. 15th and 16th,
Yeah.
Terraville. I remember us building the bookshelves together, you and I, and painting the place, painting the walls.
I wasn't actually there for the construction,
Oh, well, you weren't.
but I did run the bookstore later.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was that I was working with, but I would go back and forth, and I would paint, and we made these really terrible bookshelves, awful, out of plywood, and easy construction, and we had our bookstore, of course, in San Rafael, and we started bookstores in a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
And so and you had your office in that bookstore, I think.
Well, yeah, it was sort of a center for the church. In fact, my wife-to-be, Peggy, became the bookstore manager after me. We were dating back in the 70s. We didn't actually get married until 99.
Now, you had something else happen between.
That's true.
We're going to get to that, Bob.
Okay.
Now, you're not going to get away with this.
Okay, but I turned over the bookstore to Peggy, and that thing was a happening place. About a third of the church membership came in through that bookstore.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The same thing happened at the bookstore in San Rafael.
Yeah.
That was our strategy. We did personal evangelism on the street, one-on-one stuff.
Yeah.
We'd hold demonstrations and protests. We were people of that age,
Yeah.
and it was, very tumultuous period, and we were right there.
Yeah.
And we started the Christian houses, the little Christian communes,
Yeah.
and we started the Christian bookstores, and we'd plant churches. That was the Jesus People movement.
Yeah.
Now, at this time, you're talking about the Jesus movement is over,
Yeah.
but we didn't know it.
No. My plan had always been to train people here and have them go back to their own country. I've never been one who thinks that foreigners, well, there's pluses and minuses for a foreigner in another country to do stuff. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
I like what foreigners are doing in other countries, but sometimes it's just better for the people from there to do the work. And so, yes, I visited the Philippines, but I always took a back seat. I didn't do the preaching on Sunday. I just kind of watched how things were going and gave advice to the leadership. And I was kind of extreme about it because, there's pictures, group pictures of me with the leadership, and when they snapped the picture, I'd be behind somebody so you couldn't see me. I didn't want anybody to look at it and say, oh, well, that's run by that Cano. That's run by that American. So I wanted it to be, this is their thing. I'm not at all. I'm not going to be able to make it happen. They're going to have to be the ones. So that was a great time. I remember for many, many years, it was hard to go to sleep at night because there was so much good happening.
Really?
In the 80s, yeah.
Now, you married a Filipino girl.
That is true. After the church was off and running, I did marry somebody from the church.
And she was here in San Francisco?
In San Francisco, yeah. She
Okay.
had come over. She was newly off. She was FOB, as we say.
She was what?
FOB, fresh off the boat.
Oh, fresh off the boat. Now, you were married for some years to her.
9 years.
9 years.
Until 91.
No children, I don't
No
think.
children.
No children.
No.
And what happened?
So, a model that I do not like now, that is very commonly used amongst evangelicals, is co-pastors, husband and wife. And we actually did that. That was the model that it wasn't like a well thought out thing. It just happened. Mm-hmm. She was involved with the women's ministry, very, very in depth. Well, what happens is when the church problems start hammering away, and they do come, eventually every church is going to have some serious problem come its way, right? And it did come, and I think that shook the foundations of our relationship so strongly that it was almost for sure that it was going to fall apart.
Okay.
It took a period of some years, but there was a split in the church, and then another fight in the church, and then a period of time, and then it wasn't working out anymore. I'm not going to blame her. I know that every time a couple breaks up, that there's shared responsibility.
There's you know as well as I do that the contemporary church model, or however it's been, I don't care what branch of Christianity it is. There are problems. I had contact with a fellow that used to pastor many years ago down in Los Angeles with us, and he used the phrase "death by ministry." Death by ministry, mm-hmm. And he talked about a period of time when he was on psychotropic drugs to cope with his anxiety and sometimes lift him out of depressions. Yeah. I don't know what it is about our Christianity that in the small church or larger church is so damaging, but it's ubiquitous across the broad spectrum of Christianity. Yeah. And both of us ran into that. A buzzsaw. And I remember we began to be in touch with each other again. We were not close, Bob, I would say, for maybe about 10 years.
Less than that.
Less than that?
Yeah, well, that's about right. Because I started seeing you again around early '90s.
Okay,
And
early
then
90s.
sort of went our separate ways early '80s. So
Okay,
about 10 years.
that's
yeah.
true. But I figured about a 10-year period, and it was when you were going through tough times.
The church was actually in the '80s doing very well, and when I got. You mean that when I started seeing you again, I was going through tough times? Yes.
That's right.
That's right. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. I knew that, I knew that things were going on because I was in contact with everybody. And I knew that you were going through some difficulties. And then you got involved, you became a techie,
Yeah.
a Silicon Valley guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, '95, after the pastorate, it was like I couldn't find a niche. I couldn't find what I was going to do next. But then in '97, I read this book about making web pages. And even though I wasn't going to look for a job in that industry, I saw what was involved in the technology side of things, and I had an old Mac that was out of date and you couldn't use it for much. And I saw how easy this was to do this stuff. And so I says, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. So I got a computer, got something current, and just worked on it until the wee hours for months. And then I quit my job without any job lined up, and just started doing small things, a day here, a week here, a little bit here. And then I got a little resume going. And then I got hired at Symantec as a contractor for 2 years. And that got me started, yeah.
Yeah. I remember you helped us with some computer stuff, and you even worked for Google, I think.
Yeah, a couple of years ago I was working for Google, yeah.
Yeah. Now, fill us in on...
I was a contractor there as well.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now, after your divorce,
Mm-hmm.
what? So that would have been about
91.
91.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that?
So from 91 to 94, that was probably the bottom of the trough for me. That was a really, really tough time. I was a big time, what you would call in Christian terms, a legalist prior to this experience.
A legalist. Now,
A legalist.
explain that.
Well, a legalist is somebody who their primary orientation to what's good or what you need to be doing about the Christian life is about the stuff you're supposed to do.
Rules.
And so you're all into, Christians don't do that. Christians do this, and you have your lists, right? And I was a big,
And you evaluate other people on the basis.
and yourself. See, that's the thing. The boomerang effect of it is it comes back on you. So when I got divorced, it's like, oh, what a hypocrite I am. What a terrible Christian I am. What a failure I am. And so I went through this big trough. You know, the best thing that can happen to a legalist is that their nose get pushed into the mud a little bit for a while. And you know, God cured me of that. God cured me of that. I don't have that particular toward. You know, it makes you a real crank when it comes to other people's problems to be a legalist.
Yeah.
And anyway,
most Christians will go through a legalism stage.
yeah.
We get a little bit overconfident. We think we've really got it down, and we look at others in a very judgmental way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do us any good, and people start withdrawing from us.
Yeah.
And unless you get in with a good group of other legalists, and then you get to see which is the best.
Well, let me tell you, the real sad possibility is that you're a legalist your whole life as a Christian. Mm-hmm. That's the truly sad one. What you want to do is as a Christian, you want to mature and get a little wisdom under your collarbone and grow as a Christian and mature and learn that that's not the way to go. But you will see people who they buy into that thing of, I got my rules, do this, don't do that, and I'm holding you to it.
Well, I am fortunate to be such a notorious sinner, Bob, that legalists don't come around me. The pure, they want nothing to do with Philpott, and so it wasn't good earning that, but once I earned it, it proved helpful for me. So now, how did you meet Peggy? Well, you knew Peggy before, but
I knew Peggy.
so now I did your wedding.
Yes, at 99.
Yes. So now we're back friends again.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're back friends again.
We've been for almost a decade at that point. So in the late 70s, Peggy and I were engaged to be married.
I didn't know that.
3 times.
3 times?
And we break up and get back together, break up, and the final one was in 1980. And then we really went our separate ways, and the other churches were starting up, so I could actually we didn't see each other on Sundays. And we actually lost complete contact. I didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know what I was doing. And the weird thing about it was, when I started doing some ministry in the Philippines, she was also doing ministry in the Philippines. And we did not know about the other person, what they were doing. And we even had some of the same friends. But these friends didn't know we had anything in the past. For them, we were 2 people they knew that didn't know each other.
This is all new information for me, Bob. I had no clue.
And then in 1995, I'm out to dinner at Lions in Emeryville with a couple of friends. And I says to him, I used to know this girl, Peggy. If I could ever look her up, I can't figure out how I would. I'd like to see what she's up to. And that was it. They didn't know her. And so 3 months later, I get a call from one of the 2 guys. And he says, the other guy who was out to dinner with us that night says he thinks he might have met the Peggy that you were talking about. And she still looks good. And here's where she works. And so I called over there, and sure enough, her voice is on the recording, and I didn't hear anything for 3 days. But then I thought, oh, yeah, okay, well, I guess that's my answer, right? But then after 3 days, I guess she was on vacation or something. She came back, gives me a call, and we just picked up right where we left off in 1980.
So you got married in what year again?
99.
You someplace in San Francisco.
Yeah, it was at St. John's.
Okay.
On Lake Street. Yeah.
Okay, I remember. Yeah. I remember being there doing the wedding, and we've been friends, then. And Peggy is a marriage and family counselor.
Yep.
And does a whole lot. Has done some work at Golden Gate Seminary with their theological field education program. Yeah. And she's got a lot of responsibilities in the city. Yeah. In directing a lot of counseling work.
She's now the director of the center where she works with a team.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I was just with you and Peggy for about 3 hours here, about a month ago now, I suppose, because I was visiting you because you were in convalescence.
Oh,
you should have seen Bob.
Oh,
you should have seen Bob. What a mess.
Oh.
I remember being at the hospital where you were recovering, and I thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of what happened.
So I have this back issue, and I got a new spine guy, who says, you should have had this operated on a long time ago. This is fixable. And so I wanted to get all the boxes checked to be able to do this. And then eventually I'm seeing a cardiologist and taking one test after another test after another test. And they said, nobody's going to work on your back until you get your heart fixed, because there's some arteries that need fixing. So I says, okay, let's do this. I check in on a Thursday thinking I'm going to be out the following Wednesday. And 64 days later, I finally got out of there. It went south. After the operation, it seemed like I might not recover. It was kind of iffy, and I had a long stretch there where I had what they call ICU where you don't really know why you're there or who you're with or what's going on. And it was like 3 or 4 weeks of that. And then finally, gradually, I'm getting recovered. And then in February, when I go home, this is like almost, well, more than 2 months later, I can't even cross the room without getting winded, and I'm on air all the time. But, gradually, I didn't think I was ever going to see the end of this, but gradually, the other day, I see my heart doctor, and he says, you don't have any congestive heart failure. You don't have, you could go back to work, and you don't have to, you could enjoy your life. And so here we are.
How old are you now, Bob?
60.
60?
Yeah.
Just a kid.
Just a kid.
Man, you could go to work at a job and have another retirement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. I remember you preached at our church here just a few weeks ago when I was away.
Yeah.
Last week in July it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we were thinking, I had told people, I said, okay, we might have to have a chair for Bob. We'll put him in front of the pulpit and get a chair. But you didn't need a chair.
No, actually, I sat in the chair.
You did sit in the chair?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
I didn't know that.
I might not have needed it, but I felt, well, let's try this out. It's kind of like the synagogue in the first century where they'd sit and teach.
Well, when you came into the studio this evening, I was surprised at how good you looked. And you said you've been feeling very good.
I feel better than I did when I went into the hospital in December.
Yeah. I was surprised. I was worried that you weren't going to make this.
Yeah.
This the studio time here, so we could do this interview, Bob.
Yeah.
Now you've got some more stuff to go.
Absolutely.
Who knows what's going to come?
Absolutely.
Now you were supposed to write a book with me.
Which one? We've talked about so many. Sure.
What? Okay, I sent you a long.
The Evangel.
Yeah.
Book.
Biblical Christianity is
evangelical.
Evangelical.
Right.
And so
we still need to work on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on that. I can hardly wait. Just almost through with my second book on Islam.
Okay.
And I want to get
What's
to
it called?
Huh?
What's it called?
We're not sure. It's Islamic studies to equip Christians to be evangelical witnesses.
That's great.
It's not information so much. I don't want to pump my book here, but
right.
Bob, listen, I really appreciate you being here.
Mm-hmm.
And you got that long drive back to Pacifica from San Rafael. Say hello to Peggy, and we're displeased that we were able to do this and this good interview, and hope people across the country will be able to enjoy it. So, you've been watching Why We Are Christians. Look for some more episodes. Again, Kent Philpott, Bob Burns, and we'll see you another time. So long.